Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session on writing a content supply chain wave. We are going to cover some tips on how to get started with your supply chain initiative and also some best practices. Let's dive in. This is a real pivotal moment in time, as most of you know. If you work in the digital experience space, if you work in the marketing industry, we are seeing huge demand signals for more integration of technology, for data-driven insights, the infusion of AI, new ways of working, and a unified approach to bolstering the entire content creation process. I love what Shantanu said today in the kickoff, that we are entering the golden age of creativity, right? Contextually relevant content is desired. And it's not just about creating a lot of content, it's about creating the right content. So this need is causing an explosion of content demand, right? And it's so great to finally see MarTech and analytics and creative all being mashed together for the good of the end-to-end content supply chain. We conducted in late 2024 research with over 950 CMOs around the globe, and 82% of them said that creativity has more potential than ever to unlock growth. That's why they are so excited about this. This is what we're hearing from our clients, and this is the need that they have. They value creativity. They're also kind of saying that the new playing field is experience. And brands that do great experiences, they're going to win at the end of the day. We are even seeing brands that have like subpar products, but great experiences beat out brands that have better products. That's how important this is. But you can't really create those great experiences if the content is not there. The content plays a major role. It's essential, right? Without it, the experience really falls flat. So the content has to be timely. It has to be engaging. Like I said earlier, it has to be contextually relevant for the right moment with the right individuals, really to capture their attention, to cut through all the digital noise, and to keep them engaged. And this is also interesting. In the old days, you would have to pick maybe two of these three. If you wanted high quality, speed and efficiency was going to suffer. If you wanted speed and efficiency, quality would suffer, right? So that was the conundrum. That's not the case anymore. Thank goodness for fantastic tools that our partner like Adobe has brought to the table. It's really practical now to have all three of these. You can have speed, efficiency, and you can have high quality with the modern tech and the new modern workflow processes and the efficiency tools that we have. You can have all three of these. That's the good news. But the formula that's required here really takes an equal balance across people, process, and platform. And we see this happen all the time. A lot of brands over-rotate on platform. They buy a bunch of technology. They think that's going to solve the issue. They kind of ignore the people and the process side, and they end up disillusioned. It really requires equal balance for people empowerment and new ways of working to empower people. That's so important. Process automation, this is where AI comes in. It can rev up the flywheel in terms of content creation in a way like we've never seen before. And then, of course, the great platform and enablement tools. But it does require the coordination across all three of these to achieve operational excellence. But when you do it right, this is how it comes together, and you'll end up with a global scaled content supply chain that allows you to get to market and capitalize on the performance in market and the efficiencies of getting to market faster. And so lastly, just one more stat from the CMO survey. 75% of the CMOs said that every touch point can and must tell a brand story. And in telling that brand story, that's where they're going to find competitive advantage. So we believe that brands delivering the best experiences are going to gain that competitive advantage. They're going to emerge brilliant, right? So today in this session, after this setup, we're going to explore the craft of content supply chain. Like I said earlier, how to get started, lessons learned. So I'm going to let Michelle kind of kick it off and double click into this and start with just a really straightforward examples. Michelle, take it away.
Content supply chain is at its core today's number one marketer problem statement. How can an enterprise rapidly deploy highly personalized content across an ever-growing list of channels? Say you're the head of marketing for a global camping equipment brand, and you have 5 products to sell. When you look across those 5 products and the personas, campaigns, channels, and global markets, you realize that if you want to be able to target from an audience perspective and deliver multiple campaigns a year in the ever growing list of channels that we have today at our fingertips, as well as across global markets, you quickly end up with a calculation of 600,000 assets. Now, that's a lot of assets to try to solve for in the ways that have been available to us up until this point. I've been working with enterprises and I've seen them try to solve this problem in one of 2 ways. First, they try to make all the content with human glue. I know you know what I'm talking about, right? And realize it's hugely expensive and the the time to market is unreasonable, right? They also have tried to solve this with really not solving it, right? So, having a smaller amount of content, deploying it across those channels and markets, and realizing that customer engagement is low. They they can't optimize their experiences, and they really don't have a way to measure ROI or effectiveness. And we all know that the story of 600,000 assets that goes back to 5 products is really just the beginning, right? As you introduce dynamic content optimization, multivariate testing, and any of the AI functionality that we're hearing out in the marketplace today, you end up needing to produce millions of assets. And this seems like a problem that, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How are we going to get to these millions of assets if we want to leverage everything that's available to us? That's something that we're going to walk you through the way to approach and how to get started to create what could be in your future an infinite and endless growing list of content.
Thank you, Michelle. So I'm going to pick up on what we're hearing from our clients and talk a little bit about that and why they really care so much about the content supply chain. I'm kind of going to start at the bottom of this slide. Like content velocity for a lot of our clients is a huge problem. They're just having trouble shortening the creative approval process, and it's really a time to value issue. And when you unpack that, what we're really seeing is that it's an org change management process. They've got old processes in place and they need to kind of throw out the old and kind of bring in the new. This becomes really difficult for very large brands who for decades have been doing certain processes a certain way, but it's essential. It's back to that people and process component. The other thing that we're seeing that's kind of universal is the need for content analytics, and we're just not seeing a lot of people do this great, right? But the strategic importance of this is that if you have analytics around what content is performing, you can reuse that content with a high degree of confidence that it's going to perform well. And you don't have to create net new content 100% of the time. So if you can kind of pull up that reuse metric in terms of the content, you can get to market faster because you don't have to go through a creation cycle. And then when you look, like, there's certain things that really resonate with CMOs that we're hearing. Like, one is just they want to safely create content, but they want to create the right content, not a lot of content. And that's the risk that AI can do. It can create a lot of content, but it's not good content. It's not the right content. So it has to meet regulatory, privacy requirements, brand requirements. They're very concerned about that, right? So we have to stay true to that. They also want to control costs, right? They want to reduce the reliance on external agencies in a lot of cases. We see some brands that are working with 10, 11, 12 external agencies, and they're siloed by channel. That's not the way consumers behave, right? So there is this trend to kind of reduce the number of agencies so they can be more efficient. And then just doing more with less, like taking global campaigns and making them locally relevant around all the regions around the globe. And that's a really important, this localization effort for CMOs. And then, of course, the CTOs, in some cases, the CIOs, they really care about value realization. They've got all the tech, right? And some of that's tech debt. Some of that tech doesn't talk to each other. But if you can stitch it together for the end-to-end content supply chain in kind of a hub and spoke fashion, it really starts addressing value creation and things can really run much more efficiently. So anyway, we wanted to share those. And then, but it's still hard, right? And we're going to hit this point again. I think we've hit it 3 times, but why is this so hard? And we're seeing 50 to 70% failure rate on digital transformations, with 40% or 60% of those going over budget, right? And then you can see 49% say the hardest problem that we faced with our change was the operating model. So this is not about just technology. It's about much more. It requires what we call a whole body change. The organization has to get aligned around it. The operational model has to change. This is the biggest problem. So we're going to recommend you kind of hit that hard up front when you get started. Okay, so like I said in my opening, we kind of now live at the intersection of possibility and practicality. You can actually make this stuff work, but it requires some things up front. Kind of get started and get off on the right foot, right? So we've got 4 big lessons learned here, and Michelle, I just want to hear you riff a minute on getting started and getting set up for success in the beginning. What would you share with the audience here in terms of some best practices to get off on the right foot?
We talked about this a lot, right? Organizations have to realize that this change is really massive. And there really has to be a commitment at the top to transform together. There's so much that's involved in this. If leadership is aligned across IT, digital marketing, and regional teams, then I really think that they can make this happen in a real way. Also, organizations need to take a step back and try to figure out where they are to know where to go next, right? Getting a content supply chain assessment in place, it really informs that content supply chain roadmap. And this is the last one that I really have a lot of passion for. It's really taking that time to make an enterprise system of record, both on the campaign side and the content side, getting your taxonomy and your metadata, and really engineering that enterprise system of record, writing it down, and getting ready before you build it in any of the tools, including Workfront.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. That makes a ton of sense. And so the cross-functional steering committee certainly does make a ton of sense. Okay, so second pillar here, a lot of buzz around AI, of course, just universally, but how do you infuse AI into the content supply chain use case? Kind of give us some tips on that.
So when it comes to AI, you really have to get your plan in place again, right? Thinking about a design system and brand guidelines that are AI ready so that when you go to set up a system like Firefly or Firefly services, you'll be able to input that into that system. Also, there's so much versioning that needs to happen. We talked about all of those growing list of channels, right? This really leaving that big idea creative with your creatives will allow for your campaigns to really get that really creative juice flowing, but also allowing AI to do the versioning. And then you've heard it a lot, right? If you attended Adobe Summit, right? There is a way to safely leverage AI. Think about that using closed and customized platforms. It is important to think about your brand and and making sure that there's really safe practices in place with your platforms and really automating that experience. I think if you've got your enterprise record, system of record, right, and you created your taxonomy and your metadata, you can have that automated using AI through the entire content supply chain and measurement. And then also you can automate making sure that humans are seeing the creative through the content supply chain as it's being generated and proofed and updated.
Great. All right, this third pillar we've talked about a lot already, this org change management piece, but I got to tell you, it almost feels overwhelming, Michelle. So, what are some practical tips for getting started, Joel?
Right. I mean, again, this change is huge. And it's really something like what we've seen with the financial services model where they've had to move to SAP, right? If you think about all of the tech you have in place and the process you have in place, much of it is disjointed and siloed in most organizations. So really being thoughtful and measured under in undertaking this lift. The other thing I can say is really it's finding those change champions in your organization, right? And giving them the authority to really learn and test and harden these ways of working as you develop them before you build them again in a platform like Workfront um, to begin that technical implementation. And making those change champions come from all over the organization and all levels in the organization, right? And finally, goals, right? The organization has to be rallied around this and measured on it, right? If you establish annual goals, quarterly goals, right, for this set of change champions and for the organization itself, you can really be set up for success.
It's great. I love this center of excellence idea because I think that's just a great way to kind of have everyone rallied and swarming this issue, right? From an org change management standpoint. Okay, the last one here is analytics, and it feels to me like there's two flavors of analytics. There's kind of operational efficiency analytics. Are you getting the efficiency out of the full supply chain? And then there's like performance analytics. Like, is the experience so much better that it's driving performance and that it is driving like recognizable impact to the bottom line? So I'm kind of leading the witness here, but talk a little bit about analytics, if you will.
Sure. So we've talked about efficiency, right? That's the problem of content supply chain is the fact that we're not efficiently able to create content at scale, right? So
Yes.
if you have your operational model, your enterprise system of record set up front, and the metadata moving through the system, right? You'll be able to measure what's happening from intake to activation. You can see how efficient it is at each point in the process, at each milestone. And then when it comes to performance, right? Those tagged assets, as well as the tagged experiences that make it to the customer, can be piped into the platforms you already buy, right? And you can get that unified view of both the efficiency of the process as well as the performance of the experiences that you're creating through the content supply chain. And this really gets you to that nirvana, right, of data-driven decision making and really being able to leverage the various technologies that are in place because you have that foundational setup for your measurement.
Perfect. Well, we hope these were helpful best practices, kind of lessons learned. We want to talk a little bit about common entry points. So these are things we're seeing. They could be more, but if you look at like the simple 5-step continuum of the content supply chain, one area is just the asset creation and content personalization. And what clients are saying is, I just can't keep up with the content needs, right? I can't scale it. And so this is a content velocity issue, right? So unpacking that could be a good starting place. Another one is we called it content storage and retrieval, but it really means that your content estate is a mess, right? You've got probably multiple dams with content that's duplicative across the organization. The content's probably there. You don't know where it is or how to find it or how to access it. You're just not able to use it. Right. And so there's a lot of migration to the cloud into a unified like content solution. The content analytics piece we really touched on, but this is actually a starting place where a lot of people have a content system. They're kind of, hey, let's measure what's working and what's not working, and then let's optimize around what is working. That feels like you're starting at the end, but actually you're starting at the beginning. Right. So that's a great place too. And then this last one is just like universal process improvements and automation. I was talking to a client today that said, we put Workfront in place, but it's not configured right. We need to tear that down and re-engineer those processes so we can kind of get to this end-to-end view that's going to work. So those are just some common entry points that could resonate in terms of if you're really staring at starting this from scratch, you could start here. All right, Michelle, I'll hand this one to you.
All right, thanks, Ed. So we talked about this and the best practices and getting started, right? As you're looking across those entry points, you can also think about understanding holistically where your organization is in the content supply chain maturity model. You may have done this in one piece of technology or in one set of processes throughout your organization. But if you really want to set up a content supply chain that can run all the way from intake to measurement, you really need a framework that can help you build out that roadmap. And we've developed this one here: strategy, operating model, and technology. The work has to be done across all of these pillars and within the 5 different content supply chain subcapabilities. If you do this work, if you spend the time to understand where your company is in this maturity model, then you'll be able to have that roadmap that can really help you get started and get moving along with your content supply chain solution.
Great. The next thing is we're passionate about outcomes, and solving this content supply chain efficiency issue can lead to significant measurable outcomes and really big impact to the business and the bottom line. And we kind of look at this, we have a benchmarking value assessment to kind of help clients understand the value that they could drive, right, by getting their content supply chain in order. And the major axis is performance, right? If the engagement is so much better, you can see a revenue uplift. Things like 3 to 5% increase in revenue attributed to content. 6 to 10% increase in revenue from conversions, right? New conversions. That's huge for a lot of organizations. And then a time to revenue acceleration of 10 to 25%. And then we can couple that with the minor axis, which is like production efficiency and productivity, right? 80 to 85% decrease in cost per asset and decrease in time to publish across channels. That's huge. And then this reuse factor, we're seeing the ability to drive like up to a 35 to 40% content reuse factor, which then means you don't have to create net new content and you're that much more efficient and you can get to market that much faster. So we recommend, along with the maturity model, doing this up front as well. Okay, we're going to land this plane by taking a glimpse into the future. And, if you look at where we are right now, it's pretty much a greenfield opportunity for brands to go and just develop competitive advantage, right? The imperative here, really, there's two things. It's content velocity and it's producing the right content at scale. And it's going to lead to this value and these outcomes that we talked about. But if you don't do it, right, in 5 years, we think this is going to be probably a commoditized space for those not adopting it. They're probably going to be losing some market share. But, kind of back to the system that Shantanu talked about in the Adobe Summit keynote address, is like, this is ushering in a new experience paradigm, a sea of change in engaging experiences, a great opportunity for those that are kind of riding the crest of this wave to really take probably a once-in-a-career opportunity to seize the future and drive a radical transformation around the content supply chain. So thank you all for the session. We'll be around to ask any questions afterwards, but we really appreciate your time and appreciate you listening to this. Thank you.